Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar, Advanced Data Protection with Ethernet-enabled LTO and Archiware P5 Archive. Seeing those numbers creep up, but just to introduce myself and Nick, I'm David Fox in London from Archiware, that's my email address. And with me, I've got Nick Warburton from Symply. Hi Nick.
Hi there.
How you
Good
doing?
afternoon.
Yep.
Yeah, very well, thanks. Big good morning to our friends over in the US, and I think we've got some Europeans joining us late. So good afternoon
Yep.
and early evening to you guys as well.
There'll be people in the Americas and Europe. It's
Mhm.
6 p.m. over here and 7 p.m. in mainland Europe. So yeah, I can see a few people joining from Europe. So yeah, we've got some interesting content, I think, with some entirely new ways of looking at LTO. So without further ado, let's get things rolling. So we've got quite a lot of content to run with you. We've got a 40-minute slot. The last 5, 6, 7 minutes we'll devote to your questions, which you can type into the GoToWebinar interface, whether you're running the GoTo app or you're running the web browser version. You'll be able to put questions in there. So either put them in while we're speaking. We won't answer them during the presentation, but we'll run through all of them at the end. And it doesn't matter how technical they are either. We ran another session of this webinar about 5 hours ago, and we had some really good technical questions in that one. So yeah, please ask the technical questions. So yeah, in this webinar, we're going to give you, Nick's going to talk over some slides regarding SymplyPRO Ethernet LTO products. I'm going to introduce the Archiware P5 Archive product, particularly in the context of what makes it different. The way that it works is different when you can put your LTO devices on the Ethernet network. Then we've got a live demo of connecting up the LTO hardware via Ethernet on Windows and Mac, plus a demo of actually archiving some stuff to LTO using P5, so you can see how fast it goes, etc. And then we'll wrap up and do those, run through those questions.
Thanks very much, David. Thanks again for everyone taking the time to join us. I'm just going to start by introducing a little bit about Symply for those guys that are maybe not familiar with the brand. Founded in 2016 with really the philosophy of designing better workflow solutions and storage solutions, primarily targeted at the media and entertainment market. Since 2016, we've grown a lot. We now cover other verticals as well. Anyone really that's in needs that kind of, dare I say it, big data, high capacity storage, archive, high throughputs. But with regards to media and entertainment, our portfolio really covers kind of anything from data ingest through the kind of production post environment with VFX. And then we also have solutions for delivery and ultimately archive, which is what we're going to be focusing quite a lot today. And technologies that we use for this include RAID and LTO, cloud, on-prem object storage, and also shared storage appliances as well. So I don't want to dwell too much on it, but on the next slide, what we'll see is just a snapshot of our kind of product portfolio as it is. For those of you familiar with the brand, you'll know that we launched our Symply first product line just over 2 years ago, which encompassed disk, tape, and cloud solutions. So from a disk point of view, we had Symply Spark, which is our high-performance desktop Thunderbolt 3 shuttle RAID. It's fully user serviceable, so you can service the hard disks, but also the fans and power supplies. It sets itself away a little bit from the competition in that kind of total sort of user serviceability. So customers can be their own repair centers if they're off and about, but maybe, you know, on set or remote locations. SymplyPRO, which is our tape-based backup and archive solution. And LTO for us is, you know, we've been involved with LTO for a really long time. And as David's going to talk about later, it's an essential part of that sort of 3-2-1 data protection strategy. So it fits at the start of the workflow, you know, for your backups and also archiving the kind of finished projects at the end. Also, as part of the Symply First portfolio was our public cloud service Nebula, which offers cost predictability, its performance. So we don't have any egress charges, ingress charges. You've got a fixed price per terabyte for the length of your contract, so you know where you stand. Subsequently to that, we launched Periphery last year, which is our scale-out private cloud storage. So we do see a lot of people that aren't necessarily happy with that public cloud model, that reoccurring revenue that's associated with it. And maybe they've got concerns about governance, where that data sits, and local performance. And for that reason, we have our kind of private cloud offering, which you own on-prem. You control the cost, capacity, and the performance of that. And then a few months back, we launched Symply Workspace XE, which is our shared storage appliance. That started out, the first one we launched was our 8-bay desktop, so 8 hard drives in a desktop form factor, portable, 25 gig Ethernet connected. But also, if you've seen the press wires, we have just recently announced at NAB New York, we announced a new 24-bay and 60-bay, again, with 25 gig and actually 100 gig connectivity. So they're SAN in the boxes, so you're keeping that high performance storage, but getting the advantage of Ethernet and block connectivity over Ethernet. But as I said, we're going to focus on SymplyPRO, and I'm going to start talking about why SymplyPRO LTO is a little bit different from other competitors on the market. So first thing it's fair to say is we have the most extensive range of desktop and rack mount standalone LTO solutions on the market. And now we've added 10 gigabit Ethernet into those. So what I'm going to show you in the next slide is what makes SymplyPRO a little bit different from their competition. At the moment, those of you that are familiar with the range will know that we have both desktop and rack mount solutions, pretty standard, dual half height drives or dual full height drives. For those of you not familiar with the different technologies, a full height drive, as the name suggests, it's a larger form factor, and that brings two things. One, it brings a higher performance, so you get 400 megabytes a second native or uncompressed performance versus 300 megabytes that you would get on a half height drive from an LTO 7, 8, or 9. The full height drives also bring a higher reliability. To give you an idea of that, a half height drive has a very respectable load-unload cycle count of 80,000, which is a lot. But to put it in context, a full height drive is rated for 300,000 loads and unloads. So it's a much more robust mechanism. So we have the choice of both in our product line. As you can see from the diagrams here, both on our desktop and rack mount systems, anything with a Thunderbolt 3 interface also has a SAS connector on it. It has a SAS in connector. So you can connect these devices either to a Thunderbolt host or a SAS host. So I like to refer to them as the kind of Swiss Army knife of LTO technology. What you'll also see labeled up is a SAS expansion port, which means you can connect a third party or one of our SAS devices. So SAS RAID, SAS LTO can be connected to a Pro device, and that will bridge that SAS device over Thunderbolt to your Windows or Mac desktop. What you won't see is any of these enclosures anywhere else. They're designed for us. We designed them ourselves in-house in Cambridge, and they're manufactured for us. So they're all metal design. We try not to use plastic whenever we can. Much easier to recycle, better for cooling, and we only use for premium fans and premium internal power supplies. So there's a lot of design work gone into the chassis that sets them apart from other LTO solutions. And we also offer, as you'll see in the next slide, simply cableless. So all our dual drive desktop and rack mount systems don't have any internal SAS cabling. So we've created our own backplane, and the LTO drives sit in a caddy which connects directly to the backplane. So it's as simple as you can see here, a couple of thumb screws on the drive, and you just undo those. You can remove the drive, swap them around. So you can mix and match drive technologies within a single case. We have rugged transport case options, so you can put those LTO drives in a transport case. And it's also worth mentioning that we're a direct partner with IBM. And then that again sets us apart from other Thunderbolt vendors in the market. We're the only one that has a direct relationship with IBM, so we purchase from IBM. But more importantly, we have direct access into IBM engineering, so we're better able to support our customers. And our support runs from European AM, so morning in Europe, through to the end of the day in California. So while we're not quite follow the sun, we do provide quite a wide ranging window for support. So that's some information about what makes us a little bit different. But let's move on to why we're here to talk about Ethernet enabled LTO. And as you can see, we offer Ethernet-enabled LTO, both in our desktop and racks. But what is it that really sets the Ethernet apart? Why? What's the reason for adding Ethernet? Well, the key is disaggregating the LTO storage from the computer, which means we're separating out the LTO storage from the computer. There's no longer needs to be a direct link between them. The drives sit on a network. So that can help reduce the cost of server hardware, less CPUs or RAMs, or maybe even less computer hardware in itself. You may even need less LTO hardware to achieve what you want to do, and potentially it could even save you costs in the, dare I say it, in the Archiware software licensing that you might need to drive the setup that you have. It means also that you can install the Archiware P5 software, as David will talk about later, on systems that aren't servers. So you could install it on a QNAP or Synology NAS and have that over Ethernet target the LTO drive. So it just opens up, more configuration options to better share, manage, as well as aggregate the performance of your LTO drives. So this should save you a lot of time and effort, especially if you're sharing devices within a studio or post-production environment. You don't have to kind of pick up a drive and move it between different workstations. It can all sit on the same 10 gigabit Ethernet backbone. But it also provides advantages in performance. So we say we're up to about 20% faster than SAS and Thunderbird LTO. So how do we do that? Because after all, LTO is LTO, I hear you cry. So what our appliance is doing is it's buffering up the write commands as well as the data to effectively allow more than one command to be outstanding with the tape drive at any one time. This is important because LTO drives, without getting too technical, only support very small queue depths. In fact, there are queue depths of 1, whereas a hard drive or SSD drive will support tens or hundreds of queues coming into the drive at any one time. LTO just doesn't handle this. So being able to buffer up the commands and data results in a host system that can issue new write commands to the LTO drive in faster succession than it's possible to do either with a SAS or Thunderbolt connection. And this means that the path between the host and the LTO drive can effectively be continually filled with data, and that reduces the latency and increases the performance. So that's quite an interesting trick that the system brings to you. Then just moving on to the next slide, just to show you some of the connectivity features. As I said, we've got 10 gig SFP plus interfaces. That'll give you up to about 2,000 megabytes a second aggregated across the system. As you can see here, we've got management ports that allows you to set the IP addresses. We've got the 10 gig ports. I'd particularly like to point out the SAS expansion port, and we'll come on to that in the next slide, because what that SAS expansion port allows you to do is to connect to more tape drives. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see we've got a SymplyPRO LTO rack. Now that could be a desktop, but we're assuming that probably a rack environment. We've got our rack with 1 or 2 internal drives. We've got a SAS cable coming out of that and connecting to one of our SAS racks. And again, that can have either 1 or 2 tape drives in it as well. So you can have up to a total of 4 tape drives connected over the 10 gigabit Ethernet. Looking at the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a similar thing. We've got the SymplyPRO rack with 1 or 2 internal drives. But what we can also do is connect to an external tape library that has up to 2 LTO drives. So in this way, if you think about it, if your library is busy with commands for restores or maybe archives or backups, and you need other jobs to be done, you can use the Archiware P5 software to carry out archives or restores from tapes manually, but all crucially within the same system and all crucially sitting on the same network. So that adds a lot of value to a lot of post-production and production facilities on how they manage their data and can access data, etc. So that's kind of a snapshot, I think, of where we are with the Ethernet Pro product. As David said, please, there's a chat feature within the system. So do drop your questions in and we'll answer it at the end. And of course, there's more information at GoSymply /Ethernet LTO. But I'm going to hand over to David now to give you an overview of the P5 architecture.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, so yeah, that was all really clear. Thanks for that. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the P5 Archiware products for those that are not familiar with them, because they complement with this Ethernet-based LTO stuff really, really nicely. So there are 3 different modules that you can purchase either together or individually with Archiware. Just to state that Archiware is just a software product or software only, running on a lot of different environments. The products break down as P5 Backup, which is a disaster recovery tool to secure your data in the case of a failure to disk, tape, or cloud. Then we have P5 Archive, which is particularly applicable in the media and entertainment space because it has like a MAM database and it can write redundant. It can write data that no longer needs to be on production storage off to cold storage, which is typically LTO or cloud. And then we have P5 Synchronize over here on the right-hand side, which is a host-to-host, disk-to-disk replicator. So it replicates files and folders between 2 different systems on a scheduled basis and then update that copy every day, every hour, how frequently you need it to. So we're running on all of the usual operating systems, Windows, Mac, Linux, FreeBSD. Even we have a client for pulling data off of Solaris systems. And then we're running on NAS systems too. So QNAP, Synology, Netgear, TrueNAS. We're in the stores for all of those devices. We can also be containerized, which allows us to run in lots of different environments where we're not able to take over the whole OS, but we can sit there within storage appliances in a container. So we're doing that on quite a lot of other vendors' pieces of hardware. And I like to just put across the difference between a backup and an archive, because people often think, well, if I've got a backup software that can throw data onto tape, then surely I can use that to archive stuff for the long term. But we have 2 different workflows. So we say, no, don't do that, because a backup is a copy of your data, because you're copying it so that you have a copy that you can recover if you have a failure. Whereas archive is moving data. So with an archive, we're taking stuff off of that production storage, putting it onto tape so we can keep it long term, but also so we can fairly easily pull it back to the production storage if we need to repurpose a piece of work. A backup is just for disaster recovery, really, and it runs against all of the data that you have on your production storage every day, whereas an archive, you're selecting the data that you want to archive because these are projects that you know have completed, or maybe you've just started a project. There's a huge amount of rushes and footage coming onto your storage, and you want to commit that to tape as a one-off archive, so you know whatever else happens, you've got a copy of that, you've got a snapshot of that footage. Everybody needs at least 2 backups. So if you've only got one, think about getting another one, because if your storage fails or you have a fire and one of your backups doesn't work, you still need to have something that you can go to get your data back. A lot of our customers will maybe have an on-prem LTO backup, and then we'll also have a cloud backup as a sort of last resort to the cheapest cloud storage that you can buy. So media and broadcast companies, they generally need an archive because they create media files, and these will just fill up your storage over time if you don't have some kind of structured way to deal with them. And a structured way to deal with them typically isn't buying USB drives off of Amazon for $40 because they're not reliable beyond 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. People sort of have a lump in their stomachs if they're turning on a hard drive that they haven't turned on for 5 years. Sometimes the bearings don't work. They're complex mechanical devices, and tapes are not. Tapes are very simple. It's difficult to store your archive data redundantly just on hard drives. They're usually on-site and not taken off-site. You can't easily search them. So if you've got some project, you may have to plug in 15 drives before you find what you're looking for. And generally speaking, it's not a professional solution, and we're here to give you a professional archive solution. So with P5 Archive and Backup, you can write to disk, you can write to cloud storage, and Symply have both their periphery and Nebula products to give you on-premise S3 object storage, and then cloud-based public cloud S3 storage. And of course, Archiware supports tape, which is our focus today, both drives and tape libraries, as we talked about a moment ago. with a particular focus with Symply on an amazing range of standalone and rack-mounted drives. So what does P5 Archive do? We're going to focus in on P5 Archive for the remainder of this talk. So what P5 Archive does, and I've kind of put together a bit of an explainer here, is that it contains a MAM database. So stuff that's going offline with P5, it's all indexed in a media asset management interface, whereby a given file, a media file that you've archived, we know on which LTO tape. So over here, we've got a P5 storage pool. We've got some number of LTO tapes. And remember that LTO 9 are 18 terabytes of uncompressed capacity per cartridge. And our MAM knows for every file, it knows which tape it's been stored on, or tapes, because you might redundantly write to 2 tapes, and it knows exactly where it is on that tape. So the way that you work with P5 after you've archived your media data is you go into this MAM, you can browse and see files and watch previews and see thumbnails and identify what it is that's offline that you want to pull back online, and then P5 will drive the tape hardware, tell you which tapes are needed to recover that data. So with P5, the index is very much integral to the way that the archive works. So the P5 installation maintains this index, and this sits with the tapes that you've written. Two things go together. We have the index, and then we have the number of tapes that you've written over the years. And obviously these archives will grow over decades. You'll use different types of tapes as they get bigger and faster over time. And we also provide the ability to migrate data on those older tapes to the newer, bigger, faster tapes. So you're not holding on to the older tech. So simplest installation of P5 running on a host with a Symply LTO drive is pretty much the same as it would have been with SAS or fiber channel. You can just use an Ethernet cable, go to a transceiver, use copper Ethernet and get 2 times 10 gigabits worth of speed. So that's all well and good, but it's a bit different when you're looking to see how P5 might be made more flexible as a result of being able to connect your tape drive to the Ethernet network. So in this diagram, this is kind of the old traditional way of doing things, is that you would have a P5 server connected up to the tape hardware with SAS or Thunderbolt cables. That would all sit together. Maybe this is rack mounted, so maybe it's in a server room. And then over out here in the edit suites or wherever it is, you've got these archive users that are accessing P5 in their browser. So something important to mention is that P5 is all configured in a web browser interface. So you're getting the P5 MAM interface up on your workstation just using a web browser, and then having P5 access those tapes, writing data to tapes from your shared storage or pulling data back. So with the ability to connect that tape to Ethernet, we can take the tape drive away from the server room or the P5 server, and we can pull it out onto the where those workstations are being used. It can plug into the same Ethernet fabric and thereby be sitting next to the person that's using it, so they could pop the tapes in and pull the tapes out without having to run around back to wherever the server's located. So this is immediately making this workflow more flexible, more kind of human focused, because you can site the LTO hardware wherever it makes sense for that to go for ease of access. So in this diagram, we are taking that a step further. So now we've got 2 P5 hosts, or at least 2 pieces of software that want to access the tape hardware, because it might not just be P5, there might be other tools that you want to use. And you can easily use the iSCSI negotiator, which is the thing that runs in your operating system that allows you to connect to these drives. You can configure that so one host has access to one drive in the Symply enclosure and another host has access to the other drive. In fact, we'll show you that in a moment in our demo. So you have this flexibility that you can just have hosts connecting to these tape drives in a virtual way, purely by running software and connecting up and having access to the right Ethernet IP network to get to those tape drives. Final slide on P5 before we go into our demo. This is what P5 looks like, and I'll show you this in a moment. This is the MAM database of a bunch of AVI movie files that have been committed to tape as an archive. And within this interface, you can browse down a folder path that matches the one that you were familiar with from your storage. You can see the files that have been archived. You can see thumbnails. You can play back movie proxy of all or part of the file, and you can also view metadata that we've captured from the media files. So all of this becomes available for everything that you've archived to LTO or to cloud, to make it really easy for non-technical users to browse the archive and pull stuff back when needed. So we're going to show you this stuff. Our little demo is going to involve having a Windows machine, and I'm missing an Ethernet line over here that I've accidentally deleted, but everything is connected to the Ethernet, including the tape hardware. Tape hardware has a couple of IP addresses through which we can connect to it. So we're using one IP on the Windows host and a different IP on the Mac, and we're using the SCSI negotiator tool in order to connect up. So let's just switch over to my team viewer where I've got remote access to a couple of hosts in Cambridge. And first of all, we're going to look at the Windows host. So Nick, do you want to just run through the iSCSI? I'm calling it negotiator, but maybe I should be saying initiator, or maybe both is acceptable.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's an initiator, yeah. So as David's already alluded to, the Ethernet appliance connects over iSCSI, Internet SCSI. So this is extremely simple to do. Both Windows and Linux have inbuilt Windows does have an inbuilt iSCSI initiator, and most of the Linux kernels have all the various flavors of Linux do as well. I'm going to show you this on the Windows platform just for keeping it super simple. So it's just a properties Windows within a window tab within Windows. We can see here, in this case, we're targeting our IP address of 192.168.40.1. And in here, I can see two targets, and I've purposely only connected to one just to show you that you can connect either to one or both targets
So
at
the
the same
targets
time.
are the actual LTO drives,
targets
right, Nick?
are the LTO drives, correct? Yeah. So the targets are the LTO drives. So if it doesn't matter which Ethernet port I target, because as I said, I've got two data Ethernet ports. Either data port will see all of the devices, 1, 2, 3, or 4 drives that are attached to that. So you can see that's connected there. And if we pop into our device manager, somewhere down here, tape, so you can see that the device manager Windows operating system can see IBM TD9. TD9 is a full height LTO 9 drive, shorthand for. And then if we pop into our archive within Archiware, we can see here that we're connected to, we've got one tape drive showing and available to use, and the serial number ends sort of 306. And here, just to recap, we're connected to the iSCSI initiator, which target ends 13.3, just for example. So if we move over to the Mac
Before we do,
screen,
Nick, I just wanted to add that
sure.
reason for having two Ethernet interfaces on the LTO device is that it gives you a total of 20 gigabits worth of bandwidth, which you would need if you've got two drives or maybe even 4 drives connected.
Yeah, you would certainly need it to go beyond kind of 3. The 2 drives would be fine over gigabit, 10 gigabit, sorry. But yes, for anything more than 2 drives, you would definitely need the second port connected. But having 2 ports connected for 1 or 2 drive also brings advantages for multipathing. So the iSCSI initiators on Windows and Mac Linux, they'll automatically multipath, so they'll send data over both parts. So for SFP cable or what have you fails, port switch, then you've got some redundancy within the network as well. Yes.
Cool. Okay, so I shall switch us over to the Mac desktop. So you'll see we have a Mac there now, and we're running the Atto SCSI initiator, which is not unlike unlike Windows and Linux. This is a chargeable licensed product, isn't it? Unfortunately on the Mac, but there's a couple of these licenses that you include with the LTO devices.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple of iSCSI initiators available on the Mac. I think Atto, we're a long-standing Atto partner. You know, I think they offer some of the best support in the industry. So we select Atto to go along with the appliance, and we, as you said, David, we bundle in 2 licenses with each appliance. So plenty to get up and running with, and if you need additional licenses, they can be purchased through Symply or through any kind of regular ATO channel that there is across the world. You can see here, I'm just running the initiator. You can see here that I've got an initiator connected, and I'm the status, I'm connected here, and I can even see the LUN, so I can see the serial number of the tape drive. And if you notice here, we're connecting to that target of 13 ending 13.2, so that's the second tape drive, if you will. Yeah. If I wanted to connect to the other tape drive, it's actually really simple. I can just type in the IP address of the data port that I'm connecting to, and if the gods of demo are happy, which they are, I can see this other drive. So this is this other drive. If you remember back to the Windows iSCSI initiator, that was 13.3, so that's the other drive here. So I can quickly just add that, and now that drive is here. I can select to make it visible. I save that, and then I can go to the status of the second drive, and then I can click to log in, and now I'm logged in and connected to that drive. And you can see I can log out and log in at will to that drive. So hopefully that shows you how super simple it is to share the drives across different hosts with just simple configuration of the iSCSI initiators.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so with that, and with us now connected up to one of these drives, let's have a quick look at P5. So let's just refresh this because we might need to log in again. And what we'll do in here is we'll archive some data to the LTO drive. First of all, I'll give you a little spin round of the web interface. So that's what we're looking at here, P5's web interface. It's the archive tab at the top that we're interested in. Through here, step one would be to add the tape drive, which we already did. So you can see the drive listed here. There's a full height drive and the serial number of the drive, so all the same stuff that matches up with what we saw earlier. You then create a storage pool in P5. So a pool is like I showed you in the earlier slide with the box around lots of tapes. It's a single object that you throw your data at, and then there can be as many LTO tapes in that pool, each giving you 18 terabytes worth of capacity. So you see we've got one tape in this pool giving us approximately 18 terabytes. There's already a little job that's run to it. And then within the pool, we've got one tape. That's the tape that's currently in the drive. We label the tape so we know which one it is. And if you've got 100 tapes, they would show up in this list so you can manage them. Then we create an archive plan, which is our archive workflow, which actually does the work. So the archive plan needs to know which storage pool we're using, which is this one. And it needs to know which index we're going to be writing to. The index is like the MAM database. And then you can configure stuff like automatically archiving a list of folders on your storage on a schedule. So you can have hot folders that you throw work into and it gets archived. You can then configure previews for both moving images, and static images, so that the MAM can show proxies and thumbnails of files that have been archived. And we can even import metadata. We've not configured that in this demo, but we can import metadata from the media files. So you can also search on capture dates and codecs, or anything that we can ingest technical information from files. So the archive plan is just a couple of seconds really to set up, to specify the index and the storage pool. And that allows us to then, in the case of what we're showing you now, we'll just manually browse this Spark demo storage, which you can see mounted on the desktop here, which is quite a fast disk-based RAIDed storage, which can actually provide data very quickly to the LTO drive. And then we can choose a folder that we want to archive. So I'm going to just drill into this clips folder here and choose a folder to archive. This one here has got a bunch of MOV files, so let's archive that one, and we'll be able to see the speed at which it's archived. So what I do here is I add this to my archive selection, and I can add additional folders or files in here as much as I want to archive in this particular run. I then hit the archive button and hit the start button, making sure I've got the right storage pool selected. And P5 will then go to the tape drive so that I can open this window here, which allows me to monitor the running job. And you'll see the information in the middle relating to what's actually happening. So you can see that we are loading the tape. We will read the header on the tape to make sure it's the one that we're expecting it to be. and then we will wind the tape out to the end of the data on that tape. So there's about 20 gig on that tape already. So we'll need to wind out past that 20 gig so we can start adding more data to the end of the tape. And once that starts writing, we've just got this window here showing us our network speed. So you'll be able to see in a couple of ways via P5 and also via the operating system here how fast data is being passed out onto the network to that tape drive. And any second now that will start writing. And yeah, we've been quite impressed in our tests that we're getting a little bit over 400 megabytes a second out to this full height LTO 9 drive. The media files that we're archiving are already compressed. So in most cases with media and entertainment people using LTO, the drive will try and do compression in hardware of the incoming data, but because these files are already compressed, there's no further compression to be had. But you can see they're fairly consistent 400 megabytes a second on our data sent, and similar figures shown in here. So P5 tells us which file it's currently saving, an average speed that it's achieved so far, and then an instantaneous speed at the bottom there, where it gives us 398.5 millibytes per second right now. So yeah, everything in P5 with this drive works exactly as everybody is familiar with. You know, you can have two drives running simultaneously so that you can do what we call cloning in P5, where we're writing the same data to two tapes to give you kind of instant redundancy, and then you could take one tape offside. So yeah, that's all good. So whilst that's running, I'll just leave that going. Once you've archived some data to tape, then in order to see what you've got and maybe recover something, we go to the Restore tab, and then we will browse our MAM database, which consists initially of a list of, well, a folder listing, so we can drill down into the familiar path where we archive from, or we could be searching. And then once we locate our folder of movie files, we can first of all see thumbnails of those files, just a frame, or we can swap that and see the information view, which will give us a playable proxy that P5 created at the point that it was archiving. So we can scrub around the first 30 seconds, in this case, of the file, that's configurable, to see if these are the files that we want to recover from tape. And if we decide that, yep, we need a couple of these back, we can add those to our restore selection. And then we can also go around, find other files in other folders if we want to recover more data. And then we would hit the restore button to trigger a restore back to a folder, the default being the folder that it came from, but we could easily browse and choose a different one. Once we're happy with where we're going to restore to and what we're going to do in case files already exist, then P5 will simply give us a listing of the tapes that are needed to perform this recovery. And we've just got one tape in this demo, so no surprise that's the tape. And also telling us that we're going to restore two files, which is about 6.6 gigabytes in size. And then if I were to hit the start button, which I can do, then this will get queued up as a restore job, but it requires the volume, the tape that's already in use by the job at the top. So once the job at the top has finished writing those movie files, then the job at the bottom will recover the files that we selected back to disk again. So this interface is really quite simple to use. It's quite visual. We have a lot of customers that are not technical people, but are able to use this to maintain quite a complex and usually vast in terms of terabytes and petabytes size of archive. So yeah, we'll leave that job running. So yeah, I think with that, Nick, if you're happy, we'll conclude our presentations. We're pretty much towards the end of our 40-minute slot. So let's get straight into questions. So a question from Sam. What file formats can P5 preview? Okay, so the previews are what you can see on the screen now, those playable proxies. So we simply use FFmpeg to generate those previews. So that's happening within the configuration, which I briefly showed you here. And Archiware includes a version of FFmpeg as part of the installation, which can preview most media files, including audio files. But if you want to have a more expansive support for file formats, then it's recommended that you install your own FFmpeg on the host where P5 is running, downloading the latest versions from the FFmpeg project, and then you'll get a broader support for file formats. But basically anything FFmpeg supports, we can render proxies and previews with, but you can use third-party tools. So we have customers using the red binary for the red raw format to generate previews from those files. So pretty much anything is possible with a bit of maybe with a bit of additional configuration. Question from Joe: can you mix and match LTO gen hardware? That's one for you, I think, Nick.
Yeah, well, from a Symply point of view, absolutely. The systems that I've shown you, the desktop XTH and the racks, support LTO 7, 8, and 9 hardware, and so you could have an LTO 7 and an LTO 9 in the same rack or desktop, and use Archiware, for example, to do maybe a data migration from older tapes into the current generation of tapes. So yes, not a problem from our point of view. The only note is that the 2U units that use the full height drives, they're obviously only LTO 9, but all the others support 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. A couple of questions from Robert. Do Archiware count copies, number of duplicates? Yeah, we do. We will. If you have two identical files on a file system, then they will both be saved to tape. There's an upcoming new version of P5 where if you have a file and archive it on a Monday, and then move that file to a different location or even different piece of storage on Tuesday, we will be able to tell that that's the same file via checksums and not archive it a second time if it moves. But if we start out with identical files, we don't deduplicate in that sense. And that goes for both backup and archive. So hopefully that answers that question. I'm just trying to work out how to remove the questions I've answered, because GoToWebinar have made things different. That's done. Phil asks, can you have the LTO drives on a network that's remote to the host that's driving them? Nick, I guess that's down to the speed, really, is it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you would want, I think, as your diagram showed slightly earlier on, is that you really want the P5 instance and the Symply hardware on a 10 gig backbone. You would need that 10 gig performance to be able to drive the tape drives. It wouldn't be any good on a gigabit network. But yes, no, the unit is Ethernet, so it can sit on any network in effect. So either that be local or remote. So it's
at the end of the day, it's
built,
just packets going over the IP
yeah,
network, encapsulating
yeah,
the SCSI protocol. Yeah.
Yeah, the hardware is originally designed for kind of data center applications, so it's absolutely more than capable of sitting on the main networks.
Yeah. Michael's asking, good question. So, does every Mac client need an iSCSI initiator if he wants to have access? Strictly speaking, no. So it's just the hosts where P5 is running that need to have the iSCSI initiator installed. So it's where that host is going to directly be accessing the tape hardware. If you're just wanting to be able to browse Archiware's MAM, choose files to archive, restore files back to storage, then that doesn't require that you have the iSCSI negotiator, because it's just running. We're just using non-iSCSI protocols to do that. So it's just the P5 server that would need the iSCSI negotiator. And then a follow-up question from Michael: how many LTO drives can be accessed at the same time from one P5 unit? Something like 256. So way beyond the number of drives that anybody can afford. So that's not any limit. So we've plenty of customers running 6, 8 drives and having multiple
It
jobs
does
running at the
depend
same
whether
time.
you're CERN or the sun.
Yes,
Yeah,
if you're
in general.
CERN, then yeah, then maybe you have the budget to buy 200 plus LTO drives as well.
Good question.
Timo asks, question to the Symply project: is it possible to expand with any tape library, e.g. from Qualstar or Overland, via the SAS expansion port? A good question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's agnostic to tape drives, yeah, and probably worth mentioning that the products probably early in the sort of January timeframe, we're going to have a kind of an appliance bridge only specification, so one that doesn't have any tape hardware internally, so it's just designed to support tape library. So that could have up to 4 drives in connected on a tape library, but obviously no drives internally. So there'll be a couple of different options rolling on in the new year.
Yeah, so it's just the same as if you have a SAS port or a SAS card directly in your computer once you've got the iSCSI software running. Final question, I think, from Robert. Can you add metadata to files, brackets, size, format, codec, custom, etc.? We can read metadata out of media files and put them in this interface. Let me just click back to it, so that when you're searching archive data, you're able to search on metadata fields as well as the name and the date and so on. So we can read those types of metadata fields like, sorry, I'm just switching back to the window with your question in it, like size, like codec, etc. We can read those out of the files that you're archiving and make them searchable. We can't add metadata back into the files. So we don't modify the media files that we're archiving and restoring by adding metadata into them. That would be something for a traditional MAM that manages your online content rather than your offline content. Okay, so that takes us a little bit over time, but we had a good lot of questions. So just to wrap up, let's put our cameras back on, Nick, if you're able to, just to say, just to close things off. Hello again. So yeah, that was all. That was all really interesting from my side. Yeah, is there anything else that you think we should mention, Nick, or shall we wrap up?
No, I think there's some really good questions which sort of covered everything off. I think the key point from our side is that, you know, enabling providing the Ethernet interface sort of provides that flexibility to a company to you know, as I said, disaggregate that, so break out that connection between the tape drive and the server, and just generally make it more flexible to kind of save sort of cost and time going forward. And certainly the combination with P5 and you know, we have a lot of interest with that with the MAM, mini MAM kind of function. I think that's a great function for media and entertainment workflows.
Great. Okay, well, I'm happy with that. So apologies that we've gone a bit over time, but quite a bit to cover. So yeah, as always, thanks ever so much for attending and watching.
Yes.
YouTube video will be sent to you, plus some other information. We're really happy. Follow up with us via email and so on. If you've got anything else that you want to ask us, or if you want to buy everything, just contact us and we'll sell. Okay, cheers everybody. Bye for now.
Great.
Thanks.
Appreciate everyone's time. Bye.